our first all-civilian crew walking out of Hangar X. They look so excited. Right now they're walking down this pathway, waving hi to family and friends, some SpaceX employees in the crowd as well.
Yes, this must be such an exciting and emotional time for them.
And the crew that you see there on your left-hand side, that was Chris Simbrowski. He is the mission specialist. To his right is Dr. Cyan Proctor, the pilot for this mission.
And to her, to the right of that is Jared Isaacman, the mission commander. And Jared is blocking Haley, but she's in the background there. That is the medical officer, Haley Arsenault.
What a sight to see. They look so excited. And this is just the beginning of the day for them. They're getting ready to get into the Teslas. You can see one of them there, where they will ride to the Falcon support building, which is where the SpaceX suit-up room is. And currently they're at Hangar X. You may be wondering what Hangar X is. This is our brand new facility at SpaceX, designed and built by SpaceX to house our refurbished vehicles.
So some of them are hopping into the car. In the first car, we have Dr. Cyan Proctor with Haley, and following them will be Jared and Chris. You can see the gull-wing doors of the Model X's closing there. And they should be, again, making their way to the Falcon support building. It's a couple miles down the road. They're going to be making a left out of here, heading north on Kennedy Parkway at Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
And they will take this one last moment as they're in their Teslas to say goodbye to their close family and friends. What a sight to see. They must be so excited. They're in their Teslas, about to make their way to the suit-up room. One last goodbye to their family and friends.
Yeah, they do have a long day ahead of them. You can see the countdown timer on the bottom of your screen. We are still 4 hours and some change away from liftoff. There is a lot of procedures that will happen over the next couple of hours, and we'll be here to walk you through all of that, and we'll be able to get some awesome views of the crew going through those procedures as well.
And they are currently sitting in their Teslas. These are not just any Teslas. These are the Teslas that we have used if you followed our crew missions. These are specially designed Teslas made to accommodate our SpaceX spacesuits. So they will utilize these even after they make it to the Falcon support building to drive to the Launchpad. And there they are pulling off from Hangar X, now on their way to the Falcon support building, to our new SpaceX suit-up room.
Yes, and in the second car, we have Chris and Jared. This is the first time that we get to see inside of the Teslas. This is so exciting.
Oh, this is amazing. This is such an amazing view. It almost feels like we get to ride with them. In the Chief Executive Officer of Shift4 Payments. He is a father, husband, and accomplished world record-holding pilot. Jared has flown in over 100 air shows, dedicating every performance flight to charitable causes, and today's flight is no different. The mission is named Inspiration 4 in recognition of the four-person crew's mission to inspire support for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. As a part of Inspiration 4's public outreach, Isaacman made a personal $100 million commitment to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. He's hoping to raise upward of $200 million to support the nonprofit with this mission. Today's flight would not be
of 10. Haley's treatment at St. Jude included chemotherapy and limb-sparing surgery that resulted in removing most of her femur bone and replacing it with a prosthetic.
And communications to mission control. He is a 42-year-old mechanical and diagnostics lead at Lockheed Martin and a United States Air Force veteran. As an amateur astronomer, he grew up with a natural curiosity about outer space and even worked as a U.S. space camp counselor. He was awarded
to inspire others. She uses her space to inspire art to encourage conversations about creating a Jedi space, a just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive space for all of humanity. The docuseries is really well done. I think it's super cool that just a few days after this mission completes, we'll have the 5th and final episode. So it's almost like we get to experience what they experience real time.
Yeah, I love that part of the docu-series. It's like you get to see the before, we're going to see launch today, and then we'll get a little bit of a recap afterwards. And it looks like on your screen, those Teslas are pulling up to the Falcon support building. This is the building that has our new SpaceX suit-up room. So the crew, once they park here, will get out shortly.
Yeah, if you've been following along on previous missions, specifically with NASA astronauts, things look a little bit different today. Typically, we suit up in the astronauts suit up in the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout Facility, also known as the ONC facility. That is located a little bit closer to Hangar X, where we saw the crew walk out. For today's mission, the crew will be suiting up in the Falcon support building, which is actually located fairly close to the Launchpad 39A.
There's the crew making their way inside of the Falcon support building. And again, just as Andy mentioned, today is not a NASA mission. This is a mission for Inspiration 4 with SpaceX. So we now have our own facilities, our own suit-up room that we'll be utilizing today, which they are currently entering right now.
Kate Tice, and I'm a senior certification engineer here at SpaceX. Now, some of you are very familiar with the vehicles on the launch pad today, but for those of you who aren't, no worries, I'm about to make you an instant expert. This is a live view of our Falcon 9 rocket out at pad 39A, and it has a Dragon spacecraft on top, known as Crew Dragon. Together, they stand about 229 feet tall, or slightly taller than a 21-story building. Falcon 9 is a reusable two-stage rocket, which means it's kind of like two rockets in one, the first stage and the second stage. The first stage is the bottom two-thirds of the rocket. You might notice it's a little different in color than the second stage. That's actually soot that remains from the previous two missions that this booster supported. The first stage is responsible for accelerating Falcon and Dragon through the Earth's atmosphere and into space. To do that, it has 9 Merlin engines at the bottom of the rocket, which we can't really see here. Prior to liftoff, the Falcon 9 first stage is loaded up with nearly 1 million pounds of fuel and liquid oxygen. At liftoff, those Merlin engines will use that fuel and liquid oxygen to provide the Falcon 9 first stage with a thrust greater than 5 747 airplanes at full power, consuming 700 gallons of fuel per second. The first stage is what accelerates the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere and into space, and then about 2.5 minutes into flight, it will separate away from the second stage. From there, the first stage will do what no other orbital class rocket in the world can do. It's going to make its way back to Earth and target a landing on our drone ship named Just Read the Instructions. That drone ship is currently parked and holding a position a couple hundred miles off the Atlantic coast of Florida. Our drone ships are essentially autonomous, powered spaceports that allow our first stage rocket to land over the ocean. Now, for reference, our drone ships are equivalent to the size of a football field. So while they might look smaller on your screen, they're pretty gigantic in real life. Like I mentioned already, this is a two-stage rocket, and above the first stage is the second stage. The second stage has a single Merlin vacuum, or MVAC engine, and that will ignite after the first stage separates. At full power, the Merlin vacuum engine operates with the greatest efficiency ever for an American-made hydrocarbon rocket engine. The second stage is essentially a smaller version of the first stage, and whereas the first stage is designed to power the vehicle out of the Earth's atmosphere and defy the forces of gravity, the second stage is specifically designed to operate in the vacuum of space. The second stage powers the Dragon spacecraft to its targeted drop-off orbit. Now let's talk about Crew Dragon. It's capable of carrying up to 7 passengers to and from Earth orbit and beyond. But for today's mission, it's carrying the 4 members of the Inspiration 4 crew.
The International Space Station flies at about 400 to 425 kilometers, and the Hubble telescope at 547 kilometers. And you can see that on the graphic on your screen, how much further out from Earth Dragon and the Inspiration 4 crew will be flying. Firing room 4. Now this is the one of the 2 control rooms for today. This is launch control and firing room 4 at Cape Canaveral, here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California, to save a child's life.
And this is super exciting. We haven't seen the crew for a little bit, but they have been busy. This is Dr. Cyan Proctor suiting up in the Falcon support building.
There is the new SpaceX suit-up room again. This is our newest facility for suit-up, which is a little bit different than what you've seen if you've been following along our NASA crew missions. Again, the crew missions suit up in the O&C building. This is the new SpaceX suit-up room in the Falcon support building.
Yes, it looks very modern, and it matches the suits of the astronauts, which I love. There is a drawing of Dragon in the background there. That is awesome.
So what we see now are the suit technicians assisting the crew to get in their spacesuits, which have all been custom fitted. Make sure that everybody is zipped up and ready to go, and most importantly, comfortable in their suits.
Yeah, all the suits are custom made for the astronauts. The chairs themselves are also custom made for the astronauts. And you'll notice that the suit technicians have some numbers on their back. There are a lot of folks in the room, and with masks and everything, sometimes it's easier just to reference folks by a number. That way the crew can get what they need quickly.
Shortly, crew access arm in position while the advance team begins working to get the capsule ready for them.
And there they are. Looks like they're finally all suited, maybe getting ready potentially for some photos here. We actually asked the crew what it was like to put their custom spacesuit on for the very first time, and here's what they had to say. Just listening into some comms there, and the Inspiration 4 crew is getting ready to exit the SpaceX suit-up room, get into their Teslas just a few minutes from now, and then make their way to the Launchpad. The spacesuits, actually, they can hook up their umbilicals to the Teslas, and there is the Inspiration 4 crew walking out of the SpaceX suit-up room, looking very excited.
Some fist bumps going around.
And their suit tech crew is also going along with them. Looks like they're taking some final photos before they hop back into those Teslas.
So this is the first time that the crew has stepped outside today in their flight suits. They're now entering the Teslas. Love this new shot that we have for this launch. We are inside the Teslas there with the crew. And we've been told that they have a playlist. We unfortunately can't hear it for ourselves, but hopefully we'll be able to see them, singing along. I would love some
jams.
We see two Teslas parked there, and one of them will have Cyan and Haley, and the other will have Jared and Chris. And both of those crews in there, we can see the Falcon wing doors closing.
CRL on recovery point. Go ahead. Go ahead, water recovery. A few minutes out. Yes, sir. Can you catch me? Hey, yeah, copy. Go ahead. Yes, sir. I just wanted to verify that we are about 31 minutes out from this balloon. We are going to turn it on, get a stat log, and then do 30 seconds on each decoder, stopping on decoder 3, and then we'll send the first balloon up, boys.
Is to the Falcon support building. That was just a very, very short drive.
We got some great weather in Florida. The crew is making their way uphill, and towards the crest of that hill is Falcon 9 and Dragon awaiting them. This is a great drone shot of the facility and Launchpad.
Now, while we have this great view, I want to take a second to talk a little bit about the history, because this is hollowed ground that we're approaching here. Pad 39A is the launch pad where NASA sent the first humans to the moon. This is where Apollo 11 launched from, and as well as the first ever Saturn V rocket launched from there. This is also a launch pad where the last Apollo mission launched from, Apollo 17. It was after the Apollo program ended, it was then refurbished for the Space Shuttle program of the rotating service structure portion of the pad for safety, and also it was just unnecessary for Falcon 9. But the bones of the fixed service structure are still there. What we see here is a view of the elevator shaft, and this is the same elevator shaft used. These astronauts getting their first look at Falcon 9 on launch day. There it is.
The famous lean back.
Must be breathtaking for them. You can almost see the size of how, we're close up on the crew right now, but how far they have to lean back to look at the top of the vehicle.
It's a shame they don't wander over and look at the business end of the Falcon 9. Kate, you're talking about the history of the pad. They built what's essentially a giant concrete structure on the floor to land back in the early 60s. And you've got about a 5% grade that we saw them drive uphill to get up to the crown there. Mm-hmm. But if you go over to where the Falcon 9 is, centered up above the flame bucket, that's about a 13-meter drop down to the bottom of the fire brick. So, that gives you an idea of what it takes to channel the nearly 2 million pounds of thrust.
I just want to point out, it looked like we had a team lean back there. I don't think we've seen that yet.
And this crew grew so close to each other. And if you haven't seen the Netflix documentary, Countdown: Inspiration for Mission to Space, you can really see how they grew as a team and a family, and you can even see it here on the screen.
For sure. Something that each of them are in a different decade in their life.
Yeah.
So Haley is 29. Chris Zembrowski is 41, Dr. Proctor is 51, and Jared Isaacman is 38. So they're all in a different decade in their life, and this mission has brought them together, and the camaraderie is evident pretty much every step they take.
And it looks like Dr. Cyan Proctor and Haley Arsenault are the first to enter one of the elevators, waving.
Just kidding.
That's happened to everyone.
So they're going to take this elevator up to the 255-foot level. And so this elevator shaft is not marked by floor levels, but rather foot levels. So they're literally riding up to 250 feet above ground. 9 crew loading is a little bit higher than where the shuttle crew loading occurred. So the 255-foot level is where shuttle crew, and there they are. Dr.
That's a
Cyan
fast
Proctor.
elevator.
It is. It really is. I've been in it a few times. You leave your stomach on the ground when it takes off.
Yes, so Kate, you were mentioning some of
the webcasts back in the Apollo days were a little different than the webcasts now, and so it was a true surprise to the families when the Apollo crews would call home and say hello before hopping in their spaceship. Now it's less of a secret, but yeah, Andy, you're right. That's still the same phone.
And again, as I've mentioned throughout this, every step of this process is written into the procedure. A family member or friend.
Absolutely. So it looks like Chris and
crew to orbit, and exiting the elevator is Chris Zembrowski, the mission specialist, with Jared Isaacman, the commander of the mission today.
foreign object debris checkout, and then also assist with the side hatch close. That you see on screen right now. They took another ride to Launchpad 39A, went up the elevator, went up a flight of stairs, and now they are making their way through the crew access arm. That is the corridor that you see on screen right now.
And what a sight to see with them hugging as they're walking. Oh, they look so excited.
So these are essentially the last steps that they will take on planet Earth for the next 3 days. Obviously taking a moment to enjoy the view, smell the roses if there were any.
They're just absolutely excited and ecstatic.
Yeah, their excitement is radiating. It's making me very excited.
Yes,
We're getting very close. Again, just under 3 hours until liftoff. And some dancing.
Haley's getting very excited again. She's going to be the youngest American in space and the first with a prosthetic.
So what Haley has just entered into now is what we call the White Room, and it's an environmentally controlled room. It keeps out dust, dirt, humidity, bugs, of course, because it's Florida, and essentially keeps it environmentally stable for the crew. If you look just above Dr. Proctor's helmet there, you can see a seal. It's a black seal, and it basically seals in the room that gets installed and compressed against the capsule to maintain the cleanliness of the spacecraft. And here we can see one of my favorite traditions for SpaceX crewed flights. They are adding their signatures to the wall of the White Room. So because this is the first orbital all-civilian mission, they're signing their names next to the X logo. For previous NASA crew missions, the NASA astronauts have signed their name there next to the NASA meatball to the left.
Yes, and all members of the crew will get an opportunity to sign. And if you are wondering, this is penciled into part of their procedures to grab the Sharpie and sign the wall.
Yep, it's actually written in for the advanced team, which is the group of people that arrive to the pad prior to the crew, and they are the advanced team prepares the pad and everything in the White Room with all the tools necessary for closeout operations. And Sharpie is one of the tools listed in the procedure for the advanced team to ensure is there prior to the crew's arrival.
And one final hug.
The SpaceX ninjas.
SpaceX ninjas, yes.
And there you can see Jared Isaacman and Chris Dombrowski also making their way across the crew arm to the White Room to join the rest of their crew. Also getting a moment to take in some of the sights. And it's such a nice day over there in Florida.
It's a great day.
As John mentioned earlier, we were only 10% likelihood of violating launch conditions, which is a rarity for Florida, especially this time of year. So, if you've got a blue sky day like they have, you got to stop and enjoy it.
Yeah, I think, 10%, that's not only ascent weather, contingency splashdown, and planned splashdown in 3 days. So you're really having to get everything to come together. So I hope we can use this day. It looks great.
Yeah, that's a great point. So in selection and ultimately just giving the final go or no-go decision point for launch today, the splashdown weather in 3 days was also an important factor for consideration because that's part of the journey as opposed to missions to the International Space Station, where the NASA astronauts are typically on board station for a couple of months. We don't have to worry about splashdown weather then because who knows. But at this point, because the astronauts are coming home in 3 days, we did have to do quite a bit of evaluation for those splashdown conditions prior to ultimately proceeding into what we see here today.
You can see on your screen that Dr. Cyan, Proctor, and Haley Arsenault have ingressed the vehicle. Again, ingress is just a aerospace word for entering. They're now working on getting strapped into their seats, and it looks like Jared and Chris are awaiting their turn to ingress Dragon.
Yeah, you might have seen that one of the SpaceX ninjas, let's call it, was inspecting the floor where Dr. Cyan was walking prior to getting into the capsule.
SpaceX Dragon for initial contact.
Dragon, I have you loud and clear. Good morning.
Good morning. We've got you loud and clear, too. It's a beautiful day.
It sure is. Welcome to have you aboard.
So that was Dr. Cyan Proctor just doing an initial comm check with SpaceX core Sarah Gillis back here in Mission Control, and we just saw Jared add his signature to the wall, and Jared and Chris are now getting ready to ingress to the capsule as well.
Yeah, we'll be hearing more of those comm checks as we get closer to T0. One thing to note are those beeps that you hear. Those are Quindar tones, and those help to clear the air. That way the message can be sent and received as clear as possible. But again, as we continue to get closer and march towards T0, we'll be hearing a lot of both Sarah Gillis and the astronauts communicating back and forth to make sure all systems are good for liftoff.
Yeah, that's a great point. We'll hear quite a bit of communication, as you said, Andy, and the communication from Dragon to anyone and anyone to Dragon is actually structured. So as you just said, yeah, there's that Quindar tone, that ping, which is an indication of incoming comms. And then whoever is calling states the destination of their call. So in that case, they called SpaceX, and then they identified themselves as Dragon afterwards. So we heard the ping, SpaceX Dragon, indicating the Dragon capsule was calling SpaceX.
And on your right-hand screen, we've got an inside look live inside of Dragon. We have Haley in seat number 1. She called it the window seat. Looks like she's got her 5-point harness already on. Dr. Cyan Proctor sitting in seat 3. That is the pilot seat. And looks like she's getting waiting to get her harness strapped on shortly here. Chris just entered the vehicle as well and sat in seat number 4 and looks very excited.
He did say he was going to have a very big grin on launch day.
Yeah, he did.
And he does. He is in seat number 4 as the mission specialist for this mission.
And now about to ingress is Commander Jared Isaacman.
This is so exciting to finally see this crew getting into their seats. These are their customized seats inside of Dragon. Again, the spacesuit and the seat are basically designed together, and they're custom made for each of the crew members. We have the technicians there to help get them strapped in, get their harnesses on, get their umbilical ports plugged in.
Yeah, the seats are really interesting because they all look the same. However, each, as you mentioned, yeah, they are customized basically in terms of small, medium, and large in 3 different ways. So there's the bucket where you actually sit. There's the length of the footrest as well as the length of the armrest. So each of those 3 components are all sized small, medium, and large basically to help make sure that each crew member can fit comfortably in their seat and safely.
It's a much cleaner looking vehicle.
Looks like we got some team camaraderie happening yet again. Looks like Chris Zimbrowski there, the last one getting buckled up into that 5-point safety harness.
Dragon, I have you loud and clear. How me?
We can hear you loud and clear, Sarah.
And copy that, Jared. Let me know when you all are ready for comm checks.
In SpaceX Dragon, we're ready for our comm checks.
Copy that. Stand by for umbilical comm check.
And Dragon has you loud and clear. How many?
Core loud and clear. Ground station comm check complete. Stand by for Tetris comm check.
Also, just waving out through the hatch at the ingress team that is now moved out of the way to make sure. And now the seats are rotating.
Our Dragon vehicle.
So as we mentioned before, the pressurized section, the section that we actually see the crew in, is there at the top. The nose cone will open up and reveal the cupola, the observation dome, and we'll can't wait to see all the exciting views that they're going to see from there. And then if you look at the bottom portion, which the lighter side is reflecting towards us, we'll call it the Jedi side, and then the dark side now. I told you, Team Star Wars all the way. The dark side, which is actually the solar panels, which are one of my favorite things. We build them in-house here at SpaceX, integrate them onto the trunk, and that trunk will not be making its journey home. Unfortunately, that is not one of the reusable components of Dragon. It will be jettisoned prior to the capsule's re-entry through the Earth's atmosphere.
Ensure that all items are secure from now through launch.
And copy that, SpaceX standing by.
There on your screen, we can see the pad closeout team closing the side hatch, which is one of the last visual things that we'll see here in the crew access arm.
The crew looks so excited. I think every little milestone, even if it's within 5 minutes, they get very excited. And I think they know what to expect. They've practiced this so many times. But this is the real thing right now. So this is the real hatch closure before they lift off. And they will close the hatch, inflate a seal, they'll torque the hatch down and then perform some leak checks on that hatch.
Yeah, they'll inflate that seal and hold pressure to it for a few minutes and monitor that pressure to make sure that there's no leakage. And once we get confirmation of that, they'll basically put on the door on the door. It's a small piece that will actually go on where that torquing area is, which you can sort of see it there behind the closeout lead number 9 there on the right-hand side. But yeah, this process can take a few minutes, so they must be super excited. They can still hear the voices of the closeout team, but they can't go to space just yet. We're just under T-minus 2 hours until that happens.
Now, Kate, as you mentioned, T-minus 2 hours. In the timeline, they're right on the timeline. The plan was T-minus 2 hours to initiate the closing of the hatch. So check over radio frequency to our ground stations there at Cape Canaveral, up in geosynchronous orbit, which we'll use during the mission. But one last group still to talk to is the SpaceX Falcon 9 launch team. So right now we've got hatch closed. You can see everybody peering at it, making sure the seams look good. And then we'll wait to start a clock and see that the hatch closure is good. And at the same time, listen to the crew eventually talk to Falcon 9 launch team. As we go past liftoff, you will hear call-outs. Falcon 9 avionics, guidance navigation and control engineer, propulsion engineer will be reading out status, and that